Here we go, baby. We got some testing grounds. Testing grounds. Testing grounds. All right, who do y'all think?
Warriors, welcome back to the den. It is testing grounds time, and who better to talk about it with us than fan favorite JC? JC, welcome to the den. How are you doing?
I'm pretty good yourself.
I am doing very, very well. So, yes, we are going to be talking about testing grounds today.
Here we go.
We are going to be having a testing grounds that's going live from June 30th to July 7th. But before we get to that, we do want to give everyone a fight update to let everyone know what will be dropping on June 16th with launch of Curse of the Scarab. And to start off, we actually have some changes to Pirate that we're going to be launching with the season. So, JC, let's start off with that. And what can you tell us about the Pirate changes?
Yeah, so we've been doing
Pirate changes
to Pirate. Basically, we've been looking a lot at what we have with the community, with a lot of different sources from feedback.
Yes, side dodges are slower.
We get that like the character might be a little bit hard to play against sometimes.
Pistol Blast now moves forward less.
Or whatever. So we've been doing some changes.
Walk the Plank has less range.
It doesn't mean that these changes are going to be the only changes we'll do to Pirate.
Knee recovery is 200
There might be more incoming
slower.
in a little bit, like depending on how it works. But the idea right now is that we want to lower her effectiveness a little bit. Make sure she's still good. She works quite well, and she fits the role that we really want her to have. But there's some things that were a little bit a bit too strong.
There might be more.
So first of all, her side dodge attacks are now 600 ms, up from 533. We find that usually the dodge attacks that are 533 are a bit harder to parry, and at 6 it's generally much easier. So the idea is that right now with this, you can like heavy feint and then really bait pirates who are super dodge happy and be able to parry those dodge attacks a bit easier. A bit more effectively, so that should really help fighting against Pirate a little bit. On top of that, we have Pistol Blast, so the after block and miss version. It now moves forward less. It moves forward less like 0.5 meters. So the idea here is that we really like that Pirate can alternate between like heavies and gunshots, Pistol Blasts in a group fight and really alternate to which targets and do that sort of stuff. But the range on it was a bit too long. She was able to catch people that are really, really far away. So now, like, she still can catch people, but she goes a little bit less far. It's noticeable in group fights. So sometimes you might have to dodge cancel to dodge for it heavy, for example, but then that has its own other risks to it. So there's that that change there works a little bit better. We're hoping that, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say that like it makes Pirate like almost like less aggressive, because like when you have like be able to kind of move forward after that moves so far, it makes you feel like a lot more aggressive. So that's a really cool change. I like that.
Yeah, that's good. And we've really noticed it while we were playing internally. Like we could really feel the distance change, so that worked quite well. And then we have Walk the Plank. So there's 4 changes to Walk the Plank. First of all, it has less range, so you can actually, it's gonna be a little bit harder to gank people with it. You're not gonna go like really, really far across the map on it. So it makes a big difference there. We've also lowered the knee recovery. So basically, when you land a Walk the Plank and you don't do the Pistol Blast or dodge cancel follow-up, you have a Pirate doing a knee on the opponent. And so making it 200 ms slower basically ends up making sure that we can't do repeated comboed Walk the Plank into a backstep light into another Walk the Plank when you're at the right distance from a wall, right? So that was one of the bigger problems that Pirate has, especially in 1v1s, where she could combo and chain them together for a lot of damage. So we really wanted to change that aspect. So with that recovery being a little bit slower, that normally cannot happen anymore. So it really lowers her effectiveness for that a little bit.
No more big.
I've seen a lot of complaints about this again on a lot of feedback on social media. So that should really help out. Yeah. And then finally, we have 2 changes to Pistol Blast from Walk the Plank. So first off, it's a little bug fix. It used to cost 15 stamina. Now it costs 6. That's the correct number for comboed hits in these cases. So that way, Pirate has a little bit better stamina consumption when using Walk the Plank. That might seem a little bit weird to buff that aspect, but it's to make it in line with the rest of the rules that we have everywhere else, and also is in line with the Pistol Blast when you get it guaranteed after a heavy. But we've also increased the revenge it feeds from 5 to 30. So that should make Walk the Plank and the Pistol Blast from it a lot less effective in ganks, because you're feeding revenge much, much more, 6 times more revenge when you do a Pistol Blast now than from before. So that should really help lower the effectiveness of Pirate's ganks a little bit, and make sure that your opponents can actually pop revenge, and it's harder to do 100 to 0 ganks with her in those types of situations. So that's pretty much it for Pirate. Then we have, I think, Bloodlust, right?
Bloodlust time. Now,
No! My Valkyrie used this.
explain what we are doing to Bloodlust.
Yeah.
Because I'm
PI
seeing a lot of
better be in
different
here.
like percentages and
I
explain this to someone who
swear, I
doesn't
swear.
develop games.
Yeah, right. So the way it works at Bloodlust is a tier 2 feat that's on a couple of characters. It's not necessarily highly problematic, but the problem that we have generally with it is that the attack power, especially, stacks with feats. And so on Pirate and on Valkyrie also, you could land Bloodlust on somebody and then use Pirate's tier 3 feat, deal a bunch of damage, like you trick shot, deal a bunch of damage to 3 targets, and when it was plus 50% power, attack power, you would like you'd be close like one shotting a bunch of people. That was way too strong. For a tier 2 feat, it was really powerful, and the defense, the damage reduction too was like was a bit too strong. So what we've decided to do is we're lowering the bonus you get from Bloodlust. So Bloodlust triggers when you kill an opponent, whether it's like with an execution or whatever, and it gives you those bonuses for 10 seconds. But we've changed the percentage from 50% for both attack power and damage reduction to 20%. So you still have an impact. They're still good. You still do feel the change, but it's not as strong as it used to be. But to compensate, we've also lowered the cooldown. So normally, whenever you killed somebody, it couldn't re-trigger for 30 seconds. Now that's down to 20 seconds. So you should be able to trigger it a little bit more often, get a little bit more like of that power more often, but at the same time not be extremely strong for those 10 seconds whenever you kill somebody. And when you were in group fights, that was it really showed. It made a big difference. So with this, it's still useful, but it's more in line with other tier 2 feats.
Kind of just like better in short bursts and stuff like that.
Okay,
exactly.
Here we go.
Yeah. And so now we're gonna have Conqueror and Shaolin revamps.
And they didn't touch Ki. It's crazy.
Now I believe we're actually doing a video for this. That you recorded, JC, right?
Yeah, so I recorded with those videos with Francis, who some of you might be familiar with on a Warriors End. So a really big thanks to him. And Max, I guess you can share the videos now.
We'll be back.
Awesome. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Conqueror and Shaolin showcases.
Please,
so we're gonna start with Conqueror first.
Give Kong something
to show
good.
You what has changed from the live version to the testing ground, or from the testing ground version and the live versions to this new version that we're gonna be shipping in this new season. So first we have the full block stance. So Conqueror is really known for his full block stance. Very useful
shipping in
move.
the new season.
He has a lot of things he can do out of it, but the issue that we have on live right now is that it's a little bit too strong. There's a bit of different things, so we're trying to buff it in a way that makes sense. So the first thing that you can do with Conqueror right now, which is really interesting, is that you can cancel the recovery of any attack. So I can throw out a light, go into superior block, I can throw a heavy, go into full block stance, I can do a side dodge bash into a superior block. You can cancel basically any single one of your attacks into full block. Very well, so that really helps you catch dodge attacks, helps you react to some people, so that should be really interesting. The other thing that's kind of interesting is that before, when you used to block attacks in full block stance, you would get your own stamina drained. So right now I can go into full block, and then, see, I'm blocking attacks, and no stamina drain whatsoever. So that should really help Conqueror be more defensive in a lot of situations without sacrificing all of his stamina. Next up, we have 2 new moves. Well, one new and one a little bit new, but rearranged. So we have Flayed Uppercut. So Flayed Uppercut is now performed whenever you do a shield bash. You can do shield bash with heavy like this. You can do it on a side dodge, no problem. You can also do it when you superior block somebody. So it's a good distraction there. Or you can do from a top attack as well. I'm going to superior block while I dodge. Like this, right? So this attack deals quite a bit of damage, but the beautiful thing is that it's on heavy input and it can execute. So when you're in a 1v1 situation, you want to use it when you superior block people or you hit them with a shield bash to be able to really deal a little bit more damage and execute at the same time, which is one of the top requests we've had from the testing grounds. People really wanted to have that to be able to execute. At the same time, we also have Scottish Collection that we had in the previous testing grounds, which is whenever you superior block an attack, and you press light, you go into this full 360 zone that's unblockable, hits everybody around you, has really good trajectories. So you can do it off of any superior block, so off of full block or off of this as well. Okay. And the other change that we've done is that you can also do it after any shield bash as well. So the reasoning here is that we wanted the Conqueror to be able to have options for both 1v1 and like group fights when you're outnumbered, so that you can actually start to use your shield bashes and use a bit more of your kit depending on the situation and not be locked. Right, so it's always more choice. We want to have a lot more choice.
It's only
for
7. It's not only
get
17.
Into those really, really cool, interesting moments.
He has
give the hero
a perk that does extra damage.
We also have the zone attack. So the zone attack has changed a little bit from live. You used to be able to hold it. It had superior block while you were doing it. It was a bit too strong. Is a lot. One of the bigger problems was that if you were facing somebody that would throw an attack, you could zone attack, and if they let the attack go, you would superior block it. If they feinted it and tried to do like a light or a guard break, you would interrupt them with your zone attack. So the only actual solution to it was you always had to do heavy feint parry all the time on it. So we wanted to get rid of that a little bit. So now like a zone attack is just you hit it once, now I'm holding the buttons and it doesn't loop. But in exchange, it deals a bit more damage. So it does 15. And it can also now chain, right? So you can do this into that and you can keep going. So that's super interesting. It initiates chains. You can go into your shield bash and chains, whatever you want to do. So you can actually use it a little bit more offensively now. Speaking of chain bash, so the bash that the shield bash that Conqueror has in chains, now is still 800 milliseconds, but the beauty of it is you can now feint it.
Whoa!
So you can go into heavy feint bash. So a lot of the complaints that we had, a lot of the feedback that we got from the testing grounds is that Conqueror didn't have enough pressure and offense in 1v1 because that shield bash was not really feintable. It was fast, but it was not feintable. You couldn't really do anything with it, and there wasn't really a mix-up around with it. So this time we made it into like a one full complete move, which is a bash that can feint. So you can do whatever you want with it. It's super strong. And the beauty of it too is that it also goes into Scottish Collection, or it also goes into Flail Uppercut as well. So all these things mesh together quite well. So that's super interesting. Another thing to note is that Scottish Collection and Flail Uppercut both chain. They initiate chains, so you can go back into your chains. They don't go into the shield bash because we want to try to avoid having unblockable into unblockable into unblockable for bashes specifically going back to back. So we have that little bit of a limitation. But as you'll see, Conqueror's chain offense is also much stronger. So the next thing we want to look at is the chain heavies. So Conqueror's heavies and chains were a little bit lackluster. They were just infinite, didn't really do much. So now they are always unblockable from every side. Conqueror has an unblockable heavy chain. Now they're all 800 milliseconds. They're really strong. They do 27 damage each. So that by itself should give Conqueror a lot of pressure. You can use those when you're outnumbered to hit people around you. Super, super, super good. So it's very, very interesting there. For the neutral heavies, now the damage has been normalized. So normally, like on the sides now, you do 24, and on top you do 27. Before Conk had slightly lower damage values, so we really normalized those, so the damage is normalized with the rest of the cast, so Conqueror doesn't deal less damage in this case. When you charge the heavy, so the beauty of it now is that you charge for a lot less longer. When you normally used to charge for 1000 ms for a full second, now you only charge for 600, so it charges much faster. But to compensate, the damage on the attack is actually a little bit lower. It's at 28. It used to be above 30, so that was like a little bit too strong. So with that around, like a Conqueror can still charge. It's a lot easier to charge. You get into those mix-up a little bit easier. You can like start to initiate from external if you don't want to do a bash to feed a lot of revenge.
We're doomed.
So that works really, really well. The other thing that's super interesting too is that Conqueror can now actually feint his heavies. So you can throw a heavy and feint it. It also applies to the heavies and chains. So previously Conk could only really feint his heavies into a superior block, right? You can go to full block stance, you can still do that, but now you can actually do heavy feint guard break and actually do these things. You can do heavy feint into a parry, into whatever you want to do. It works much, much, much better. So that's quite interesting, and it works.
But
really,
yeah,
really
Yorm
well.
still sucks.
And the last thing I want to point out is that in the last testing grounds, Conqueror had removed his infinite light chains. We put them back, but we put them back exactly how they were on live, meaning that if you do the same direction, they are still very slow. We wanted to make that change so that Conqueror wasn't really negatively impacted in his minion clear, which was a bit of a problem in the testing grounds. But at the same time, we want to make it a bit easier for some players to react to those infinite lights. It can be kind of overwhelming at lower skill levels to have infinite lights in all 3 directions constantly. So by doing that, at least you only have to really care about 2, because if you use a previous direction, it's a lot easier to block. So that's about it for Conqueror. So next up, we're going to look at Shaolin.
This is hilarious.
All right, so now we have Shaolin after a really nice Conqueror. So for Shaolin, what we focused on quite a bit is key stance. More like an easier access to get the key stance, but also getting better flow for the hero in general when you are in key stance and all that sort of stuff. So let's go into it first of all. So first off, key stance. The lights in key stance are all enhanced. I'm going to do a top light now, and you see it's enhanced. You can do a side light. It's enhanced. Same for the other side. And it's enhanced, right? So they're all now 500 ms, and they're all enhanced. So that should give Shaolin a little bit easier time pressuring people with his lights when he gets into key stance. And as an aside, also the top one also does not stun anymore. The stun property there wasn't super useful. Didn't really give Shaolin anything good, so we decided to remove it.
Nah, this is not testing
ground. As for heavies in key stance, they are all now 800 milliseconds.
This is in the game.
And they are all undodgeable. So even 16th, top is undodgeable. It used to be unblockable. It was useful in some very, very niche situation, and we decided that it's better to have more consistency on having top and sides instead of having just sides and top be unblockable. Top is often the better option when you're doing undodgeable, because if your opponent dodges, like, because a lot of the times you can dodge and get an accidental block when you're dodging, whereas if it's on top, even if you side dodge, most of the time you're gonna get tagged by it, so that works much, much, much better. We also have Sun Kick. So Sun Kick
you're doomed.
Chains on miss.
You can't run.
It makes it a little bit safer against guardbreak. You can do a lot of different things with it, so that's kind of interesting, and it works really, really well. But the next big thing that we've done with Shaolin, which is super interesting, is that all the lights, so either like his lights like this, the heavies, you can do like this, or the Sun Kick Strike, this one, they all chain to the sweep now. So I can go top light into sweep. So every single one of Shaolin's key stance attacks that are done with light or heavy all go to his sweep now. You can't do it after Sun Kick because it wasn't that useful anyway. So we've moved that around a little bit. And so having it after any attacks actually really improves Shaolin's flow, because you can go, wait, I'm going to redo it again. So you can go that into sweep, into another heavy afterwards, that's guaranteed. That also goes back to key stance.
Oh, wow.
So you can, in theory, go completely nuts, go like that, crazy, back into this.
It's like he's
so
just
you see the flow that Shaolin has is much better. When you get into key stance, you can be relentless in key stance and continually attack. As long as your attacks kind of are blocked, you're still good to go. So that's super interesting. And on top of this, that sweep, to make sure that it's effective, it can also be feinted. It's 800 ms, but it can be feinted. So if your opponent is going to dodge, going to try something, you can always feint
you
guard break,
you could just dodge,
and then that
bitch?
guard break leads to a heavy, which leads back to key stance. So the idea is really, we wanted to make key stance really a central point of Shaolin, and to have that as his main source of damage really, really well. The next thing we've done is for his side dodge attacks. So before they were kind of a bit stranded. Whenever you used to do these, they're good. They have good trajectories. They're not that bad. But the problem is that you were kind of stranded. You were kind of stuck there. So now the beauty of it is they can now initiate chains. So you can go into this infinite chain as much as you want. And they can also go into key stance, right? So Shaolin can now dodge an attack with this, go into key stance, go into Sun Kick, go into this, and keep the whole flow going and keep it going again. So it's one of the ways that we want to make sure that Shaolin has an easier way heading into key stance and keeping it going there. And in the same spirit, we've also added another move to Shaolin. A lot of the feedback that we've gotten for Shaolin was that he had a really hard time opening up opponents, even with the top light, which is now enhanced, you can see. Even with that, it wasn't enough. So we've decided to give him this move from dodge forward bash. It's the same kick as he has when he sprints. So it's a little bit different, but at the same time, it's good because it goes to your openers, like you do in Sprint. So you can go into these types of things. So you can use it to open up opponents. Go into key stance. Again, flow. Do the whole thing. So that works super well. It's super interesting. It's a standard type of badge that we have. So it's 500 milliseconds. You do it from 3 to 5 in your front dodge. And it changes to openers. So that's really, really well. As I said before, the top light is not enhanced to in neutral. So that gives Shaolin a little bit more pressure on this one. The side ones, because they get comboed, we really didn't want to give them that enhanced property there, but on top it makes a lot of sense. The other thing that we have on the side lights as well is that you can now mash the buttons to get them. Like, you can't really see it there, but I'm really mashing the light button. It makes the input a lot easier. Before there was like a lot of timing involved there. We're moving away a little bit from mechanical skill and timing skill for these types of things. So it makes a lot of sense there. And we've also adjusted the damage. So before, when you used to do this, the first hit used to do 5, the second used to do 5, and the last used to do 7. So it kind of backloaded the damage of this. But the side effect of this was that we wanted to do it to make sure that players would actually be encouraged to go deeper into those 3 hits. But the side effect was that you used to spend a lot of stamina for very little damage. So we've changed it so that the first hit does 10, the second is 4, and the third is 4. So it's 18 overall, 1 more than we used to have before. But on top of that, it also front loads damage. So you get 10 plus 4 for 2 hits instead of getting 10. So you're getting 14 instead of 10. It's a lot more in line with the rest of the opener lights. Makes a lot more sense. Works quite well. And last but not least, we have Shaolin Zone. So Shaolin Zone attack was a little bit strange in that, like, if the second hit was blocked or landed, the third hit would always get blocked or always hit. It was kind of hard to understand there. It didn't make a lot of sense. You didn't really have any incentive to go in it. So we've changed it a little bit. So it's a little bit slower, right? So the second and the third hit are slower. The second is 800 and the third is 9. But you can now target swap them in between hits. And we've also improved the damage on them. So the first hit does 12. The second does 15 and the third does 18. The stamina cost has been normalized a little bit among them too, so they're all now 12 stamina rather. And because you can target swap them, it's super useful in group fights. So you can start this on one target swap to another one, target swap to another one. You still can feint at the timing you could before, so it works really well. And we're hoping that this attack is actually going to give Shaolin Zone a little bit more utility. It's much better in the minion lane. We fixed a bug that made it miss on minions, so it wasn't really that good. So that's about it for Shaolin. A big thank you to Francis, who was helping me be my body bag today. So thank you very much. And back to Josh, and we'll keep talking about the following testing grounds. Thank you very much.
There's more.
We're back.
There's
and
more.
We are back, Warriors. I'm super excited for these Conk changes and Shaolin changes. JC, do you have any kind of like thoughts on the video? Any kind of like things you want to add?
Yeah, so basically, we're really happy. We listened to a lot of feedback. We gathered a bunch of feedback from a lot of different sources. I know that we didn't have the time. There was like some issues with sending the survey. I've seen some people on social media going out, what happened to the survey for this? So there was a couple of things that were outside of our control that made it so that we couldn't send it. But we're gonna keep sending surveys in the future. It's just that this time we sadly were not able to. But at the same time, we were really able to gather a lot of feedback ourselves on Reddit, on Twitter, on like our official forums, everywhere we normally go. So we were still able to make good decisions based on a lot of feedback that we've received there. I'm super hyped for them.
What happened with Conk? He got
both
everything.
Conqueror and Shaolin feel much better.
He has everything.
They flow better. Everything's better. So I'm super hyped for those.
Everything you can think of, he has it.
I'm excited too. When I was playing Shaolin on the testing ground, because he's a hero that I don't really play a ton, but I had a lot of fun. And hopefully I won't be bad at him once he's live. But speaking of testing grounds and stuff like that, we're going to start talking about
guardbreak vulnerability. That's what that picture was.
Starting on June 30th, going all the way through July 7th. And as you can see, we're testing guardbreak, JC. What's going on?
Yeah. So this time, instead of doing like specific hero changes, we went with a more system-wide change.
This might be huge.
And so I'll give you a bit of history on how, like, why we're picking this and where we're going. It's basically right now in For Honor, we have a bit of a problem, right? So when you're outnumbered, it's very, very, very difficult to attack to defend yourself if you're not very specific characters, right? So Jan Jung, for example, is really good at defending himself offensively, doing like Sifu stance into zone and all that sort of stuff. But we don't really want to give that to everybody. Clearly, like we want to have people have a bunch of the heroes that have uniqueness and differences between each other. So one way that we're tackling this is changing the way guardbreak vulnerability works when you're in recoveries, right? So right now, like I said, it's very difficult to attack when you're outnumbered because you can't reasonably attack generally most of the time because you can get guard broken in between attacks after you do finishers if you don't have a bunch of recovery cancels and stuff. So we really wanted to make sure that everybody can attack a lot more when they're outnumbered to make sure that the game is again more offensive. We've been pushing the game towards a more offensive state. We're trying to encouraging people to attack, to press buttons, to get more engaged, and not just sit back and do nothing. So that's one of the big things we're doing. And it's important to note too that this doesn't mean that you can't get interrupted in between attacks, right? You can still get hit by a light, by a heavy, by all sorts of stuff. It just means that normally guard breaks will not be able to hit you in between attacks and after your finishers. It makes it a little bit harder for your opponents to really interrupt you while you're in your chains. When you're outnumbered, that should be pretty cool.
So I'm gonna ask this question. We can cut it if this is a dumb question, but I would imagine that it would also like in terms of ganks, like they would be less punishing, I guess. Like if your guard break stance was,
Yeah. So one of the big things that it does is that when you're getting ganked, like it's more like it's harder to get ganked with this because a lot like some ganks start with a guard break in between hits, and so one of the like more generic ganks that a lot of people have is you see somebody doing an attack, you guard break them in between hits.
Lawbringer got nerfed.
You get a heavy,
hard.
Your ally gets a heavy onto your opponent, and that's already like 2 free heavies there super quickly. So with these changes, that guard break
Lawbringer just got nerfed.
If you want to throw a heavy
in there, buffed?
You need to time your heavies a lot better. I need to do them way earlier. It opens you up to being able to be hit and interrupted by the trajectory that your opponents have. So you can still do lights. Lights are still relatively fast. But again, even with a light attack, you still need to really like time things really well. That's one of the big things there.
Too bad I still can't punish it.
So let's go over the changes themselves.
I don't have a dodge attack.
So most attack recoveries are now fully immune to guard break until your hero regains the ability to block. What this means is that on hit, on miss, and on block, you are fully invulnerable to guard break, which means that guard breaks will bounce off of you. So, like, let's say Josh does an attack, I dodge and bash. If I hit the window before he's able to block, I'm gonna guard break and I'm gonna fail and kind of get pushed back a little bit, like we have in the game right now, anyway. But that's like the big
that confirms
change here.
No damage.
Also, every single chained attack is now fully immune to guard break. Often enough, they had like 100 MS at the beginning, and depending on the attack tonight, it was a little bit more that were immune to guard break. So now chain attacks are fully immune to guard break every time. We want to make sure that there's no holes in your offense there, right? That you can like get a lucky guard break in between or whatever things. And then the last thing we did is that every single bash that had a recovery of less than 766 MS on miss now has 766 MS on miss recovery to ensure that all dodge attacks will always beat bashes. So that's to make sure that because you can't really like side dodge into guard break anymore on anybody, on most heroes, there's some of the really much slower recovery attacks on miss still have some guard break recovery vulnerability because it created other types of issues. But in general, that's what's going to happen. And so at that timing, it means that the slowest dodge attacks are able to hit if you dodge at pretty much every timing, and you can hit and your attacks are going to land. So that's going to be really good. What's interesting here is that we've also added dodge attacks to Highlander right now. So Highlander can do side dodge heavy into defensive stance, right? So that's super cool. We're reusing the animation that he has from his dodge for heavy soft feints. So those work quite well. And it really helps Highlander defend himself against bashes. And the other change that we have in there that's not really listed, but it's a bit more technical, is that Janjun can now go into Sifu stance at the same timing as when he can block while he's in a recovery. So normally you could only go into Sifu stance at the very end after you regain your ability to dodge and everything. But now it's as soon as you can dodge out of something, you can go into Sifu stance. So that Janjun's actual bash punish in chains is to go into Sifu stance and do a zone. So we've worked on that to make sure they worked well. From our testing, it worked quite well. That it was super interesting. And the last thing that's super important to note here is that this only applies to hit, block, and miss recoveries. It doesn't affect dodge cancels, full block stance canceled like on Aramusha and Conqueror that has now, Kyochin and whatever. So there is still that element here of risk when you're trying to use those cancels that you can still get broken. It's really only if you let your attack go and you keep chaining, or even if you don't chain but you don't cancel into anything else, that you will be fully immune to guard break. So don't go thinking that I'm gonna like a Conqueror is gonna do a bash, go into down stance, and I can't do anything about it. You can actually side dodge and guard break them and still get the guard break if they read that you were gonna try to do a dodge attack on that. So it's a lot of stuff there. But yeah, so that's interesting. The other thing to note is that we tested a couple different things, right? Because this might seem to be a bit drastic to make everything guard break immune all the time. But we did test a couple of other alternatives, and we wanted to show them to you just to make sure that like people understand why we made these choices, right? One of them is that we tried making recoveries guard break immune on everything except miss, right? Because at some point you're like, okay, well, we still wanted to see if we could keep side dodging to guard break on different bashes and stuff. The problem that we ended up having there is that in For Honor, an attack counts as a hit, block, or miss only on your main locked target and not on external targets. And so let's say I throw an attack at Josh. Josh is too far, and then there's somebody else on the side that my attack hits. My attack is considered to be a miss and not a hit, but it's not very clear, right? There's no indication in game or whatever that you actually hit or miss, because that would be like, it would be a little bit too crazy. So because of those types of situations, it would count as a miss, and you could get guard broken in your recovery. And because we need to have that predictability of, I threw an attack, therefore I'm immune. But if I'm only immune in certain situations and not in others, and it's not super clear in what situations you are or not, that feels really, really bad. So we really standardized it to make sure that it was super clear that every time you're in a recovery, you can't get guard broken, and that's the end of it. And the other thing that we've also tried is to make, instead of making yourself guard break fully immune, we tried to make it so that you could tech them instead, right? So being able to tech a guard break while you're in recovery was still good. It's not a bad idea, but the problem is that it still interrupts your chains. If I'm throwing an attack and then somebody lands a guard break, regardless of if I can tech or not, if the guard break lands, it means that even if I tech, I'm still vulnerable to their ally. I'm still vulnerable to a bunch of stuff, and it still stops my chain.
Yeah,
and that's something that we really wanted to get away from, to make sure that we had a very, very stable game and that everything worked well, and you didn't have to go, I'm still getting interrupted.
I guess you got to dodge bash.
We really want to promote that offensive part of the game
to beat Musha.
So that's kind of it. I wanted to make sure that everybody knew that, like, we really tried a bunch of different things to get to this point, because, as I said, it does sound a bit drastic, but it actually works quite well.
See, JC, this is why the people love you. You come on here with all of your knowledge, you drop it, and we're all now a little bit wiser about the game for it. Like, I actually feel like whenever you come on and comes on,
we're in for a doozy, guys. We're in for
more about the game, just like the technical side, because there's a lot that goes into like the behind the scenes.